All right, sure. Okay. Well, I thought they were going to come in. Okay. All right, good afternoon. I'm Captain Eddie Rogers. I'm the commander of the Public Affairs Unit here at DPS. Our office received multiple requests from the media for the names of the Good Samaritans who extricated our trooper from his vehicle during the multiple fatality collision which occurred on Friday on U.S. Highway 93 north of Wickenberg. We reached out to them to see if they were willing to give their perspectives of the event, and they graciously agreed. We are honored and grateful to have them with us today. On Friday, April 30th, 2021, at approximately 8:29 p.m., Arizona Department of Public Safety Trooper Casey Reinhardt responded to a request of a motorist assist from a call box on southbound U.S. Highway 93 at milepost 172. Trooper Reinhardt contacted the occupants of a 2003 Chevrolet Suburban, who said they didn't believe they had enough gas to make it to Wickenberg, which was approximately 25 miles away. Trooper Reinhardt told the occupants he believed they did have enough gas to make it to Wickenberg, and he would follow them to make sure they got there safely. As Trooper Reinhardt and the Suburban began to travel southbound, the driver of a 2011 Honda Accord was driving recklessly, speeding, and passing in a no-passing zone, according to witnesses. The Accord struck the Suburban head-on, which caused the Suburban to roll and come to rest on its passenger side. The Accord continued northbound and rotated out of control, striking Trooper Reinhardt's patrol vehicle. Trooper Reinhardt's patrol vehicle then rotated and came to rest on the southbound shoulder. A 2021 Toyota Corolla was traveling northbound and was struck by one of the involved vehicles. Trooper Reinhardt was trapped inside his patrol vehicle, but was extricated by Carol Lee Irvin, who was driving the Corolla, and Russell Christensen, who was in a separate vehicle. Both Ms. Irving and Mr. Christensen are here with us today. The driver of the Suburban, who was identified as Rose Catherine Weingard, died on scene. The driver of the Accord, who was identified as Brianna Alexis Wilson, died on scene. Trooper Reinhardt and 3 others were transported by air to Valley hospitals with non-life-threatening injuries. Another person was transported by ground to a Valley hospital with non-life-threatening injuries. We are happy to inform you that Trooper Reinhardt was released from the hospital yesterday and is at home recuperating. I want to remind you all that this is still an active investigation, and the department will not answer any questions regarding that investigation. At this time, the director of the Arizona Department of Public Safety, Colonel Heston Silbert, will have some remarks. Following Colonel Silbert's remarks, Carol Lee Irvin will come to the podium and will share her perspective on the events and answer your questions. When she's finished, Russell Christensen will step to the podium and share his perspective and answer your questions.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Mr. Christensen, Ms. Irvin, I want to thank you on behalf of the men and women of our agency and on behalf of Arizona law enforcement for your actions, for your bravery and your courage. We got to spend a little time just before we came in to this meeting and got to talk a little bit. And I told both of them if these were troopers that were involved, we'd be awarding 2 medals, and we'll eventually be giving them formal awards at our award ceremony. One would be the Medal of Life Saving, the other would be the Medal of Valor. And the conduct that you displayed to save our trooper's life was valor. I guess the greatest characteristic a human being can show for another is that they would sacrifice themselves to save another person, someone they had never met. I'm not sure that character can be measured in any greater barometer or standard than that. And both Mr. Christensen and Miss Irvin displayed this highest echelon of character, and I want to thank you for that. Lieutenant Colonel Hunter, our deputy director, just said while we were in the other room, stated that we had our law enforcement memorial on Monday. This is the week that we memorialize our fallen every year. And on Monday we had our memorial. There's 30 names of fallen highway patrolmen, officers, and troopers on that wall. Unequivocally, had they not taken the action that they did, Carolee and Rusty, we would put a 31st name on that wall. And I want to thank you. I know this is not a custom when we have a meeting with the press that I'm addressing other people and thanking them in this manner, but I'm humbled by your actions, and it's all I can do is say thank you. And on behalf of Trooper Reinhardt, who I know recognizes what you did better than anyone because he told me personally, specifically, about what you did, I thank you, and I thank all of you for being here.
Carolee will talk about where she was that night, just kind of do the narrative.
So I was in the Toyota Corolla, we got hit. So all I remember from that night was our car spinning. Once it came to rest and stop on the shoulder, I just jumped out of the car. I noticed just the carnage that was right in front of me. Wasn't registering exactly what it was. I just knew that I needed to get out and help. So I observed somebody walking around on the side of the road and advised him to go sit down, and then I could hear somebody screaming for help. I didn't know who it was. I didn't know who he was at the time. He was just screaming for help. So I ran to him, and once I got up to him, I realized it was the trooper who was standing trying to get out of his vehicle but wasn't able to. The bottom half of his door was stuck. So I was able to grab onto the top half of the door and pulled it open enough to where I got a hold of the trooper, and then we both fell back from the car. But I wasn't strong enough to pull him away. So at that time, Russell was able to join me, and we pulled him away from the car, far enough away from the flames that were continuing to get bigger. Once I knew the trooper was safe with Rusty, I started observing that there was moaning from the Honda, and went over to the side of the Honda and realized there was a person still in there trapped, not able to be out. So I just stayed next to the Honda, trying to comfort and let the person know that was there, that we were there. If he could hear me, we were not going to leave him, and I stayed with him waiting until EMS arrived, and just that's kind of what I did.
Any questions from Ms. Irvin?
Did anything from your profession or any training that you have enable you to be able to help in this way?
I think that's what it is. I think it wasn't my profession. Yes, I do work in, oh yes. Is that better? Better? There, okay. I do work in the medical field, but it was more just the simple fact that people were hurt, and I knew I was not, and I could get out and help. So that's all it was. Mm-hmm.
And what was going through your mind when you must have been in shock at the very beginning, and then?
I was in shock. I think I still am in shock, I'll be honest. I can't say anything in particular was going through my mind. There wasn't a rhyme or a reason of why I did one thing versus another. Again, it was just more, I'm able to help and I need to help, and I'm going to do whatever I can do. That was kind of my response. So.
Where were you headed?
We were headed to Bullhead City. Yeah.
Can you describe again how the door was stuck?
On the trooper's car?
Yes.
So, if I'm remembering right, so from the window up, it seemed to be a little bit ajar, but the bottom part of the door, so like the handle. So originally when I got to him, I reached for the handle, and it wasn't moving. There was nothing to be done. So I was able to reach up to the part that was just pulled out enough. I don't know how it was bent out enough, but hands on the top of the door, put my foot on the side of the car, and I pulled the door back enough to where I could reach in and help him down. Yeah.
The flames at that time?
The flames were in my peripheral, and I didn't even register that it was on fire. I didn't even think about the flames. It was on fire, but I don't know. He was able to speak to me, yes. So once I pulled the door ajar and I grabbed a hold of him, he did fall to the ground, and then he said, "My knee is hurt, I can't walk." So then I tried to pull him, but was not strong enough. So then that's when Russell was able to join me, and we were able to pull him away.
After all of this, what is the one takeaway that you've had the chance to reflect on that has touched you the most?
That it was just such a senseless thing that had to happen. It didn't have to happen. People lost their lives, and people's lives are changed forever, and it just didn't need to happen. Obviously, I'm so grateful that I was there. I question why I was there. I was able to walk away from something so horrific, and I don't know why I was, but all in all, this whole thing didn't have to happen. Could have been avoided. It's just so sad.
Rusty? Is Russell Christensen? You want to just talk about
I'll be honest, the first part of it, I have a hard time composing that part of the whole thing. And as she said, I could hear the screaming, and I actually, at the beginning of the accident, I ended up at the Suburban, which was the most southern vehicle in the accident, and it was on its side, and I helped one of the occupants out of there. But once I realized that the other two occupants inside were trapped and there was no way to help them, that's right when I heard Casey Reinhardt screaming help. So I started running towards his vehicle, and I actually started going to the passenger side because I could see him. He was trying to break the window, and then I saw Carolyn end up at the vehicle, and once I realized she got the door ajar, that's when I kind of swung around the vehicle. And I can say the flames, they weren't huge, but it was getting bigger. I mean, literally by the second, it was like traveling down the vehicle, and it was pretty windy too. That was the other thing, is it started brush on fire around his vehicle, and that kind of stoked the fire to make it get going a little harder. And once he got out and ended up on the ground, he stayed on the ground. I mean, it was so, the terrain was so horrible, and there was so much stuff on the ground. We were falling all over the place, just trying to drag him and get him away and at a safe distance from what was going to become a pretty big fire. So that's the part that really I remember. And by the time I got the 50 feet or whatever we got Casey away from the fire, I was spent. I mean, I couldn't even stand at that point. So I kind of just hung with him, and I think you kind of stayed with one person too for pretty much the remainder. And then by that time, there were other people on scene that kind of paired up with the injured, and aided them in whatever way was possible with what we had to work with. Mostly from there, it was comforting. And I will say, the one thing I did notice was Officer Reinhardt was still running the scene from his back. It was crazy. He had a notepad out. He was telling us what to do. He was telling me if I needed to get him away further, and, stuff's exploding in the vehicle and flying by us. So he was composed, and I know he was in a lot of pain, but he still ran that scene, even in the condition he was in. So I mad respect for him and all of the officers and first responders that came to aid for everybody.
How's it feel to save a life?
It's not my first time, but it was the scariest time, and that's what I noticed was this is the first time I've been in this type of situation where I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I really was scared. It's just everything was moving so fast, you kind of don't really realize it, Anybody else? I will say my takeaway is that I walked away and I've really realized that, yeah, I ran into a situation like this, but it means nothing if there's not people clocking in every day and doing it for a living, I have mad respect, and as Americans, I think we all need to come together and put our arms around all of our first responders and police officers and troopers and all the people that walk into danger on purpose on a daily basis and know that there's a big possibility they could be walking into danger. That's my takeaway.
Are you from the valley?
I'm from Tucson. So I was driving to Las Vegas, funny enough, for a memorial. I had a cousin that died on a memorial bike ride. He got hit by a car and died during a memorial bike ride for a bike rider that got hit by a car. We didn't make it, but we had a good reason, I guess. So.
Is there something that you would like to share to other drivers that are on the road that see people in accidents and see something like this happen? What's something that you can give them advice?
One thing is, you don't drive through a scene. It's totally unsafe. You don't know if there's injured people laying on the ground. I mean, there was so much debris, and there were a couple drivers that drove through the accident to get where they were going. And I thought that was totally disrespectful to everybody. The troopers unit hadn't even gone up in full fire, and they were driving 10 feet away from this vehicle. So that's one thing. The other thing is, put your phones away. It's not cool to be taking videos and taking pictures, and I know that from afar there's something to take away from it, but there were a lot of people walking into the scene that didn't need to be there with their phones, taking pictures and videos and stuff like that. So that's what I would say.
Do you and Caroline know each other? Or
Nope.
are you
Nope.
strangers?
We do now. And the other thing I want to say is she had the presence of mind to get out of her wrecked car and run towards it. I was just somebody who happened to pull up at the southern end of the accident and get out to offer assistance, but I really didn't know what I was running into. She did. She had a way better idea, or she might not have, I don't know. But that's pretty amazing to jump out of your wrecked car and run towards danger to help people. So I'm sorry, it's really hard. I'm still struggling with a lot of it. I mean, my voice is still shaky, and I struggle with it still a little bit.
Was your car part of this accident as well? Did you get caught in the accident?
No. I was saying it was funny because I pulled up at the south end of the accident, and so many people had to veer in order to avoid hitting other vehicles and even hitting some of the vehicles that were involved in the accident. And it was like the parting of the Red Sea in front of me. And just the way it worked out, I kind of coasted in and flipped a U-turn, and I had my headlights on one of the involved vehicles so that we could aid them. So it was just kind of like I was in the right place at the right time, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Mr. Grissom came all the way up from Tucson, so we need to set him. He's got a long drive ahead of him.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Unless you have something pertinent, thank you for coming. Thank you.
Sure. I will do the spelling of the name if you guys want that.